this video is going to be about the tricks of the trade when it comes to drawing. And these are some of the very simple things that you're going to need at home. The very first thing is at least a number 2 pencil like this. Good old school pencil, number 2. The second thing you're going to want is some kind of stump that you can use to make a blending stump. So all I did was I took an old paintbrush. You can see here, not the most professional one. It's just something you'd find around the house. You can use a pen, you can use a pencil, any of those things. And I'm going to show you how to make a blending stump with that. And that's just some toilet paper at top with a little bit of some masking tape. But if you don't have masking tape, you can use duct tape. You can use basically just about any tape that'll stick to itself. You can even use tape that you use for bandaging if you need. One of the other things here is a sharpener. Of course, when your pencil is going to get dull, you're going to want to be able to sharpen it, so that's pretty important. These are very cheap. You can get them for about 50 cents. You want a pink school eraser, and you want to go ahead and split that down the middle like this, and you can do that with scissors. And then you have the option of purchasing something called a tortillon, which is basically a blending stump that you tear away little pieces of, and we'll explain that a little bit more a little bit later. But first thing we want to do is make sure that you understand why we have a split eraser. We split our eraser for this reason here, so that when we split it, we can go ahead and change the shape of the eraser by cutting it a little bit. So what I like to do is I like to have sharp ends of my eraser, and I like to have a kind of pointy side like this. Very carefully, just cutting my eraser down to kind of a point like this. And of course, this is something you're going to want to go ahead and do with your clients just because it works a little bit better. And this is nice because the school eraser allows you to get a point of any kind you want, or you can keep it dull like this. You can flatten an edge out, you can round it out simply by going back and forth and erasing on a piece of paper to blunt it. And as you'll see in our lessons about shading, this comes in very handy because an eraser can really take away just a very precise amount, or like just a great big blob of graphite. So it can be very useful. And a split eraser is terrific. So you can have one side where you can carve if you need to, and the other side is just a general eraser that you can use to just erase with. This item here is called a tortillon. A tortillon is just kind of a blending stump that's pre-made, and by the way, you can get blending stumps that are pre-made. They come in different shapes and sizes, but of course you can go through them very quickly. Then you have a tortillon, which is kind of one where you unwrap it. So it kind of comes like a toilet paper roll does, or like a tube of biscuits, and it kind of has that spiral around it, except it goes to a little point. And when you want a new piece, you take off a piece of the spiral, and there leaves a layer underneath that's new. The blending stumps are a little bit different. A blending stump is the one that you can purchase from the store, is a little more like this, and I'll draw that over here. It looks kind of like this, just a kind of generic kind of cylinder with a point, okay? And it's like a newspaper, a pressed newspaper. And what it does is it has a pretty good point to start out with, but you're going to need to purchase a file, which is basically a square, a piece of sandpaper with a paddle, and then you rub it against this like this on the paddle to take off the extra dirty graphite that's on here, so it gets all dirty like this. And guess what? That costs money to replace those. They come in different sizes. To get a good set, it probably costs about $15 to have lots of different sizes and stuff. But guess what? Being an artist doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to have a lot of money. All you need is a couple of things like we have right here, and you can make your own blending stump at home, and you can make it of different shapes and sizes. So don't waste your money on a blending stump until you get to be a super pro and have had lots of practice. Then you don't want to spend your time on making blending stumps. You want to spend your time on drawing. But for now, for us, this is perfect, and this is all you need. And to be honest, I do lots of commission work, and I still use blending stumps like this because I don't like paying for blending stumps. Now to make the homemade blending stump, it's not as bad as you think it is. You just want to use some kind of utensil, and I'm going to go ahead and use, let's see here, I'm going to use a slightly bigger based brush so you can see a little bit easier. This one's a little bit rounder. And all I'm going to do is take some regular old toilet paper that you would find at home in your restroom. Better have some toilet paper. And I'm going to cut the end so that it is not jagged. And then I'm going to cut about a 1 foot long piece. Now you're going to want to make sure that you're using toilet paper that is not extra soft or 2-ply or 3-ply or any of the million plies. Just regular old toilet paper is fine. You don't want it to be too soft, and you definitely don't want any kind of toilet paper or tissue paper with lotion or moisture in it. That's going to really mess up your drawing, so do not do that. So what you do next is you fold this over itself. So this is about a little longer than a foot, probably this is more like 14 inches. So you fold it over itself to make a rectangle like this. Then you fold it over one more time, like so. Then you're going to go ahead and turn it into a triangle like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the end of your brush or your pen, anything that's a little blunted like this. You don't want it too pointy because it'll poke through. You can always use the end of a pencil if you have nothing else. So you want to set it right here. Whoops, sorry, I always get this a little confused. You want to set it at a point kind of like this. So see the 2 long points here like that? You want to turn it sideways like this. You want to fold this fella down at an angle like that. Okay, and then you're going to fold in like this, fold down, and then fold around like this. So you have kind of a wraparound top like that. And then all you're going to do is take a piece of this tape that you have, your everyday tape sitting around your house. You want to make sure that the top is at least a little pointish compared to the middle section there. You want to go ahead and wrap it around like this, kind of tightly. And this makes a blending stump that you can go ahead and change out all the time. So I like it so that there's thick sections on the side here, so I can turn it sideways and go like this, or I can use the top part like that. And this is very helpful for blending when we go into some of our blending options for our projects here. And it's important that when you're doing this that you realize you can use your finger, but the problem with that is, you'll see here in a second, if I scooch this over a little bit and I bring in a piece of paper to show you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a little cone, just like we did in our other lessons before, a real little small fella, like so. And it's going to be the tail of 2 cones, one here, one here. And I am not going to do any shadows in the background and stuff like that. I'm just going to start with a real general cone here, okay? And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start to smush and smoosh around to move and blend out that way. And as you can see, my finger is pretty dirty there, so it shows that I get the graphite on my hand, which is not that big of a problem, but just because it makes you feel dirty. But when you're drawing, if you go like this, you're going to smear it all over your paint or your drawing, so that can be an issue. The second thing is, watch what happens if I use my blending stump. My blending stump is going to give me a more precise blend because its surface area stays pretty consistent. Because our fingers aren't very consistent actually with the pressure on them and how they're built, and they're smushy in different parts. Okay, and the blending stump stays pretty much the same thickness and hardness at the same areas. So you can see one looks a lot rougher than the other, but that's not the end all be all. So when we go here and we try to erase, I'm going to take my split eraser and I'm going to take the one here with the non-sharpened ends, okay? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to erase my edge there to kind of tighten it up a little bit, same thing. Adding in here, and I'm going to go in and erase there to add in a little bit of a highlight kind of through the middle area there. Gonna get the extra gone, like so. Add some back in a little while. Get a line there on the side, a little bit line there, a little bit around the bottom. Okay, and then over here, I'm going to go and do the same thing on the sides. But as you can see, where I ground my finger in really well, if I go and try to erase it here, it's not really erasing very well. See it? And if I go in here and erase the whole thing on these, really get in there pretty good. Even though I pressed very hard, the one on the right is much better erased than this one. That's because, look at that smudge left over from the graphite on my finger. So that's pretty important when you're drawing. Try not to use your finger. The more teeth that are in the paper, which is, if you turn your paper sideways like this, it kind of looks like a little ocean like this under a microscope. The more you have of those, the harder it is to erase something. And if you put your oil in there and you fill the little tops of the ocean, the little holes that are there with your oil, it makes it a real mess when you go to erase. Your sharpener should be self-explanatory, but let's pretend right now that we don't have a very good sharpened pencil. Let me grab one over here. I'm just going to go ahead and break the tip on this. There we go. Which will happen a lot if you're somebody who draws pretty hard. So here is our tip on our pencil. It's broken. It needs to be sharpened. And this is a sharpener that you have to guide the sharpened pencil into, or the pencil to be sharpened. So it goes straight down here. It's a little cone like this. Oops, see if you can get in there. Okay, and there's a razor blade in there. So first of all, don't run your fingers past here. It's pretty hard to get in there, but just in case, don't. And you want to make sure you go straight down. It should guide your pencil in there pretty easily. But the problem is if you are doing it, or a client's doing it, and you start wobbling like this when you're turning it, it's going to break your pencil lead. So what you want to do is you want to hold it real tight in your hand like this. Hold your pencil sideways, and then keep it upward so you can actually watch your pencil being sharpened. Do it small amounts, rotate a little bit at a time. Keep going each time, and then gently pull out, and then you're going to have a nice sharpened pencil. And you can keep going until you get the lead how you like. Just simply hold this in your hand until you're finished, and then dump it in the garbage. Something else you're going to want to keep around, and each kit has included one of these in your household. If not, you can use a piece of paper that came with something that you had wrapped. If you ever buy canvases, they usually put a piece of this in between canvases if you buy a multi-pack. Basically, any kind of plastic that's at least a little stiff can be used with a dry erase marker, which comes in really handy when you or your clients are starting to draw. So you can put it underneath here, and that's the reason I've included this in your package. So let's say we have this picture here, and our first lesson that we have out of our whole series here is actually discussing finding shapes. So this is why this is super helpful for you and your clients to have. We did not include a dry erase marker, but most people have a dry erase marker around the house. And then, so all you're going to do here is start to, same as you did in your drawing experimentation, is find those shapes of your creatures, right? Find those shapes, those general shapes, so that you can figure out how to build an object. And you're going to go ahead and finish this and work on this as you do go through your different projects. But that's one of the reasons that we include this. It's also very good for creating a grid system. And that's something that we're going to go into in another lesson here. You'll be able to look that up shortly in our series. And grids are super helpful. You can, if you want and your client wants, you can also turn that into a grid like this, a 1-inch by 1-inch grid. And if that's something that you're interested in, all you have to do is literally use a Sharpie marker and mark your grid out with a ruler 1 inches apart, 2 inches apart. It doesn't matter as long as it's square. For more information on that, please see the lesson about grids, and that will make a lot more sense.